Now, the war for talent is heating up all across East Asia, and it's not just skilled workers that are in short supply. Acute labour shortages cut across many sectors as the region grays amid tumbling birth rates. For the debut of East Asia tonight, we shall examine the labour woes across the region.
In 2022, Elon Musk controversially tweeted that Japan will eventually cease to exist at the rate its population shrinks. Asia's second-largest economy may face a shortage of more than 11 million workers by 2040, according to a 2023 study. From tapping on foreign workers to mobilizing robots, the country is in a desperate rush to plug the gap.
また人口減少に伴い人手不足が恒常化する中、デジタルの力を活用することが重要です。
Last year, neighboring South Korea beat its own record for having the world's lowest birth rate, reporting 0.72 births per woman for 2023, down from 0.78 in 2022. The largely homogeneous country is learning to live with a new reality. The growing presence of foreign workers in its midst.
축소 사회에 대한 대비도 시작을 해야 된다. 다시 말해서 저출생이 상시화된 그런 대한민국 사회를 대비해서 과연 무엇을 지금부터 준비해야 되느냐 하는 것도 준비를 해야 된다.
The working age population of China, the factory of the world, has been shrinking for a decade now. The Chinese government predicted the size of this group will further shrink from 880 million in 2021 to 700 million by 2050, a dive of 180 million, larger than the entire population of Bangladesh.
数字型、创新型、复合型的高技能人才仍然稀缺，钳工、焊工、养老护理员等一线技工普遍短缺。
From construction to F&B, businesses are bearing the brunt.
因为长期缺工缺会造成我们的服务下降，可能大家不太能理解这个状况，因为其实我觉得有一些店1-2年我都还在请到店长。
Facing a worsening labor crunch, Taiwan has turned to India for a new supply of foreign workers, while Hong Kong did not look far. Since July last year, the city's construction sector has been allowed to bring in workers from China, marking a drastic shift in its labor policy.
And joining us for today's discussion, Sean Lee, General Manager, Robert Walters China, and of course our Hong Kong correspondent, Deborah Wong. Well, thanks so very much for joining us this evening. Well, let's just kick things off with you first, Sean. I mean, you've been a recruitment expert in mainland China for more than 15 years. Walk us through what are some of the top talent trends and which are the sectors where you're seeing some of the biggest gaps?
Hi, Natalie. Thanks for having me. Yes, I've been running a business for recruitment in China for almost 15 years, and I definitely can see that in the past few years we are seeing more and more a lack of talent in multiple sectors, and actually what we're also seeing is that there is a slowdown of recruitment activities due to the uncertainties of economic growth and geopolitical situations. But the labor shortage, one of the biggest reasons is that, in China, the Generation Z is less interested in the traditional industries, in manufacturing, in F&B, in technical areas. So not to mention that the birth rate in China has dropped. But in terms of the middle to senior end market, where we talk about high-skilled labor and talents, then most of our clients, the companies that we work with, with say that they see less skilled talents in the market, and one of the reasons is that I would say more and more companies prefer versatilists rather than specialists, which means versatilists are those who have diverse experience in multiple domains of expertise, and it's not unusual to see a lack of talents that has a diverse background like that.
At this point, I actually want to bring Deborah in, because Deborah, you are based in Hong Kong. As Sean says that, with Gen Z showing interested only in certain sectors, in Hong Kong, where you're at, we are seeing that Hong Kong and Taiwan, for instance, relaxing their visa restrictions. Is it an indication as well as because it's a Gen Z issue, or is it because they can't develop their own talent pool fast enough?
Well, absolutely. The talent shortage in Hong Kong and Taiwan, it is quite dire. So Hong Kong and Taiwan are dealing with aging societies, like what we saw in the story that just aired a couple of minutes before we came live to us. And there's also an immigration wave that both cities are looking at. So for Hong Kong, that's partly driven by a very slow economic recovery brought on by long pandemic closures, as well as the aftermath of the 2019 protests, where young adults and families all started to leave Hong Kong. And in Taiwan, because that city is experiencing low wages as well as relatively fewer international opportunities. So a lot of young people after graduation, they're looking abroad for better opportunities and better wages as well. So it's short of workers in manufacturing, semiconductor, as well as the retail industries. And both governments are responding by dishing out a lot of incentives to attract foreign talent to their cities. Now, in Hong Kong, we have this thing called the Top Talent Pass scheme, which allows eligible applicants to enter Hong Kong without having secured a job first. And these applicants are meant to be from eligible universities. They are high-quality talents. And recently, Hong Kong also relaxed its property curbs, making it easier for foreigners to buy property with the eventual goal of settling in Hong Kong for the longer term. So in Taiwan, authorities have also allowed foreign university students to stay 2 years after graduation. So in all these talent programs are meant to increase the number of foreign talents settling in these two cities.
And Deborah, from what you're saying, they have put a fair bit of effort, trying to attract this talent, and pay, of course, being one as well, which, remains an important factor to cope with the cost of living in general. But what other factors are crucial to keep a talent? Well, let's listen in to an interview with an HR expert, Jaya Das. She's the managing director of Randstad Asia Pacific. Let's listen in.
At the same time, the expectation is that if I'm not learning in the job, they're quicker to leave than, say, their cohort would have been 5 years ago, where they stay in the role longer, hoping for growth and development, and they don't move as much. But these days, the expectation is if I don't teach myself and the company doesn't invest in me in terms of learning, I actually have no job security because of the rate of change.
So, Deborah, we heard there, essentially, people, they want this work-life balance, but there is this thing called the 996 culture in China, especially in the tech company, where, they have to work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. How prevalent is this in Hong Kong?
Well, it's not so prevalent in Hong Kong. The Hong Kong Federation of Trade Unions found that over half, of Hong Kongers work more than 45 hours a week, with some even working longer than 70 hours a week. And those figures are way higher than the 40 hours work week that's listed by the International Labour Organization. So that same poll also found that 2 in 5 workers were not compensated for the extra hours, and about 85% of respondents in that study also reported symptoms of overworking, such as, a decline in concentration. They are experiencing stress. They're experiencing also long hours of fatigue. So legislators have urged the government to amend laws to ensure cases of sudden death from overwork are covered by labour insurance. And, all these labour rights issues really came under the spotlight in Greater China after we saw some workers in the mainland collapse from long hours of overwork. So this inevitably stirred up a lot of public outrage, and eventually the government made the 996 culture that you brought up illegal back in 2021. But, I was in Beijing recently, and I did speak to some locals to find out exactly what is the reality on the ground. And many of them still said that the 996 culture is in practice today. So my question, Sean, for you is, why is it so hard for companies to shake off this culture? And have you seen it impact hiring, for instance?
Yeah, so as I'm in China, I definitely can feel that there is a lot of pressure that we see from people working for high tech companies, and 996 has been sort of a culture. But I would say the situation has changed a fair bit, especially after the COVID situation in the past few years. The Chinese labor law, I don't think there is anything about that to stop companies, to sort of encourage or ask people to work long hours. But there is a greater awareness from the workers as well as, the talents in the market now that, they will say no to this unhealthy behavior or culture that's not sustainable. And I would say that, in regards to how companies retain these talents, apart from, having more balance for work and life, a lot of the candidates in the current market say that, job security and long-term prospects of a business would rank much, much higher than, the salaries or even learning opportunities in the current market situation, because we have seen a lot of layoffs in the past year. And I think this is also one of the biggest reasons that, some of the people, they are reluctant to sort of say, hey, I would say no to long hours because they are afraid of being laid off. And then in the current market, it could be a bit difficult for them to find a new job. So I think, this has changed a little bit, but still, situation remains there.